The Freedom Convoy, the protest known around the world, gave hope to the hopeless. But what has happened to the organizers? Beside me is one of those, Chris Barber. You're not going to want to miss this report.
I was at an event in Salmon Arm last night, and a lady got up and read a letter. And I've seen this letter many times before. It's a sentiment that we've seen across the country. And it was a story of suicide. You know, she was going to take her own life. And then those trucks fired up. And she got hope again. And she read that letter last night. It gets you. It gets you right there. So no, it was, we saved a bunch of lives and we brought hope to a bunch of people. So as far as I'm concerned.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and this is Chris Barber beside me. Thanks for being on Rebel News today.
Thanks for having me, Drea. Appreciate it.
Now, Chris Barber and I were actually speakers at a big conference that took place in Victoria. It's called the Reclaiming Canada Conference, put on by We Unify. But of course, I had to grab you over so that the public could get an update on what's happening in your life since organizing that huge protest that, like I said, gave so many people hope.
Well, as most people know, that Tamara and I are facing trial in September. Our first trial date is September 5th. I've got 7 indictable offenses right now facing me, from mischief to counseling to commit mischief, intimidation of a peace officer, and going against a court order. Each count has a condition or a counseling order against it, as well as Tamara has the exact same charges, as well as a breach charge she's going to have to defend. So trials in September 5th through the middle of October. In Ontario and Ottawa. So we're excited to hit the courtroom and be able to defend ourselves against these. I've always been that guy that's yelled at the steering wheel, yelled at the windshield, didn't like the direction of my country under this administration or even the previous ones. You've been watching it slowly descend where I didn't feel comfortable with it. And I'm a staunch conservative. I've always voted conservative, but this country isn't what it was. You know, when at a time I remember earlier.
Well, I'm glad you guys are excited. I'm also sorry that you're facing that type of persecution, I will call it. I know something that people have told me in my emails and in person is that during lockdowns, Rebel News was such a light to them for giving a voice to the people. But boy, when the convoy came over, did we ever still hear that about what happened there? Just so many people were so excited to see that they were not the small fringe minority. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the conditions that you have?
Basically not allowed to support another convoy. I've got orders in place that I'm not to protest. I'm not allowed to have another convoy. I'm not allowed to speak with Tamara Litch and Danny Bulford or Patrick King right now. Those are the 3 people on my conditions list that I can't have any contact with. So it makes it a little tricky when we're going up against the court. You know, with Tamara and I being tried together, we have to speak through the lawyers constantly. Eva Chipiak and Keith Wilson are our main civil lawyers, as well as Diane Magus in Ottawa is mine. So it's been really tricky the last 17 months, making sure, you know, Tamara and I have been at a couple events here in the last little while where we have to make sure we have lawyers. So Keith Wilson and Eva Chipiak are our main civil lawyers. They follow us around. We commonly refer to them as the world's most expensive babysitters. That's quite comical. My family's been very supportive. Probably my parents are my number 1 fans. My loving wife is right beside me the entire time. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl, as well as a boy and a girl for stepchildren, a split marriage. So my wife has been probably wishing things would go back to normal a little bit. It's been definitely a whirlwind of activity, and life has changed a lot. We're dealing with it as good as we can. It just, when I'm home, I try really hard to spend the time with the family that I can. And then when I'm gone working or off at freedom events like this, where it's a constant, it's a lot of work and it's very busy. January 15th, as everybody knows, the cross-border mandates became a law for unvaccinated truck drivers to cross the international border. That affected my life. I felt the pressure of that going forward, and I gave to the pressure, and I got vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated with a card. But a lot of the people that I work with in this industry didn't want to go that far. We lost a tremendous amount of good quality drivers in this industry, a lot of which retired. A majority of them then stuck to just Canada. So for the last year the mandates have been still in place. They were still in place under the Biden administration. It made it difficult. We were short drivers, and it's really hurt the last while. The mandates have since been lifted. We're back to normal per se, but those drivers that retired or shut down aren't coming back. We've lost that quality of driver now in the industry.
And naturally, I'm just going to ask you, and feel free to say, no, I don't want to go there. But what about finances? I imagine with the way that you guys have been labeled, or also just the amount of stress for what you're going through, it might be hard to maintain that. Well,
fortunate enough for us, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, as well as the Democracy Fund, has stepped up and is looking after both of us. Democracy Fund is funding Tamara's defense. The Justice Center is funding my defense, as well as the civil lawsuit that's against us from citizens of Ottawa. So we're very fortunate. It's important to push the fact that people need to keep donating to the Democracy Fund or the JCCF to keep this fight going. We desperately need people's support on this, and that's what keeps the fight going. Everything was organic. Everything was grassroots. Everything was organic. Police were reaching out to us to say, safety was the utmost concern, and we had daily morning safety meetings with the trucks in the parking lots. We expressed that the entire way out there. It was communication, there was rules, there was a code of ethics that you had to follow. We didn't want troublemakers, we didn't want violence, and we stated that right from day one. And so working with the police was a vital thing that needed to be done right from the start. And OPS, Ottawa City Police, constant communication with them. We had daily briefings with them on the people that we didn't have daily briefings with, or even a conversation was, our sitting Prime Minister, who we wanted an ear to at least listen to some concerns. We got name calling. We got the media was used as the propaganda wing against us and vilified us, demonized us, whatever they could do to try and turn that narrative.
What message do you want to say to the people who were moved by the convoy, or even to the people who don't understand it and think it was, I don't know, an act of terrorism or something?
Well, and the truth was that it wasn't an act of terrorism. And as you know, as well as many other do that were on the ground in Ottawa, the documentary was made by Eagle Vision Production Studios. Yeah. It's called Unacceptable. And if anybody has a chance to go watch it, I highly recommend it. It gives you the entire story of what happened on the ground in Ottawa from the time it started to the time. And it's a very emotional film. I'm in it very little. I actually blew the producers off a little bit when it come down to filming time for it. I'm in it a minor amount, but it is one of the most powerful documentaries I've ever seen. And I stand with it and support them on making sure that every Canadian watches that. I wish they'd actually play it in schools is what they should do. People need to become more involved, whether it be your local school boards, whether it's your local rural municipalities running for mayor, running for city council. Become involved with the politics in it. If you want change in this country, that's the only way forward, and peacefully, of course. Mm-hmm.
Well, there you have it. Chris Barber will keep you updated on his case, Tamara Leach's as well. And you can also catch his talk as well in the description box below at the Reclaiming Canada Conference. I'm Drea Humphrey for Rebel News.
Thanks, Drea. Much appreciated.
If you appreciate this report and all of our coverage of the Reclaiming Canada Conference, please consider chipping in to cover our expenses to get here. We had to take a very expensive ferry. By we, I mean myself and Alex, who's behind the camera. We also had to get an Airbnb to stay here, and all of that is expenses that we rely and hope that you will help us cover. So if you'd like to chip in a few bucks to do so, please go to rebelfieldreports.com and chip in what you can. We appreciate your support.